This was admittedly a bad week for comic books. There wasn't a whole lot great there. We did talk about the best of the week yesterday, but we've got a couple of comic books that really stood out. We're going to talk about Earth Prime Batwoman #1 from the writers behind the Batwoman series on the CW. It's as bad as you can imagine. And Spider-Punk #1 from Cody Ziglar. And here with me to talk about that is the X-Men historian, the Marvel aficionado, Doc. How you doing, Doc?
Oh, you test me, sir. You test me every week, and this one hurt.
I normally don't feel bad about it, but I did feel kind of bad about it this week because these are especially bad. This was a really bad week for comic books in general, and these are exceptionally terrible. Let's head on over to DC Comics and talk about Earth Prime, Batwoman #1. Natalie Abrams and Kelly Larson, who I believe are writers on the series at CW for Batwoman, with Clayton Henry on art. Clayton Henry's art is perfectly fine. It's not fantastic, but it's good. It reads like everything I hate about CW shows, but amped up to about 5 million. And what the weirdest part about this is, Doc, is they're tying the story in the comic book to events that happen on the show. And I have no idea what's happening, but I know I hate this character, Mary, because they won't stop referencing her, even though we never see her.
If you're not a viewer of the show, you're going to be completely lost, like utterly and completely lost. And now I did have a little bit of an expectation of that coming in. I'm like, okay, they're going to...
I didn't think they would lean so heavily.
No,
A vast majority of this comic book is them meandering, talking about the plot points from the show.
Like, you're like, okay, well, this happens between episodes 4 and 5 of season 3. I'm like, what? And I am completely and utterly lost.
There's a lot of really strange characterization in here. Luke Fox is not my favorite character in the world, but I do like Luke Fox, specifically when he was Batwing back in the day.
Yeah.
But this weird, like, sissy version of Luke Fox where, I don't know, I guess he's just sitting in an apartment and he's looking things up on Facebook to track villains for Batwoman. He make him cry a couple times, and he just... Like, what the hell did they do to Luke Fox? He's such a cool character in comic books.
This version of Luke Fox is exactly the same character as the Mr. Terrific character from the last couple seasons of Arrow. Yeah, they literally wrote him exactly the same. Oh, except for that Mr. Terrific was gay, and this one's straight. Like, Luke Fox in this is straight, but no, they are written exactly the same. There is no difference between the Luke Fox in this comic and the Mr. Terrific from the Arrow show.
There's some other weird stuff in here. I guess the story revolves around Clayface, who had been destroyed, I guess, by Bruce Wayne, but he kept a sample of mud that he wanted to keep, I guess, in the Batcave, which apparently has been destroyed, according to this comic book. And I guess it got out, and then it affected somebody. I didn't realize Clayface worked like that. I've never seen him presented this way in comic books, but apparently Clayface is really an infection, and he infects this young kid who's being bullied. So Clayface now controls him, and they're going after the bullies, and I guess that's the story. And you could probably have a perfectly fine one-shot comic story there, and it could have been somewhat exciting.
This version of Clayface is apparently Venom. This guy at a field party gets tripped into mud and gets infected with Clayface. Because apparently, yeah, as you said, well, I don't think the Batcave's been destroyed. I think it's been, like, looted. Because they were talking about Batman's trophy room. Because apparently Batman, like every serial killer, keeps a trophy room here. I mean, yeah, we've always had Batman having trophies, but still. That seems weird that he would keep a sentient being in a jar.
They also said they dissected Clayface, which seems completely impossible.
Yes.
From what I know from Clayface.
Exactly. Well, and then, so you get partway through this comic, and then Lena Luthor literally shows up as the magic lady that just comes in to tell them how to do this. Because they have a couple of conflicts with Clayface early on in this comic, and they have no idea what the fuck to do. And then suddenly she shows up from the Supergirl TV show, needs a freeze thing for some sort of... Yeah, the freeze serum for some sort of fucking other project. And she's like, oh, yeah, and by the way, you could use that to stop this Clayface guy. Whoa, isn't this fucking convenient?
Well, and that's when all the soap opera bullshit hits the fan, and it's just all drama from then on out. She's got to go to her mom, and it turns out her brother stole Wayne Enterprises from her and kicked her out, and fucking Luke Fox is crying because he lost his family, and And like, it's like, why are you trusting a Luthor? We all know that's a very bad idea, but apparently her brother turned on her, and she's having to run her Batwoman Enterprises out of a fucking apartment. When you read this, as someone who's never watched the show, this is everything I hate about what happened to all the CW shows that are good for a season or two. It's just all stupid interpersonal drama, and it just overshadows anything good that's happening with the story.
I feel like this is like we fell into like a Telemundo thing. Like halfway through, it was like a Telemundo, like one of their soap operas. That's where
soap operas are funny. There's no joy here. This is just boring.
Oh yeah, this is more just like, this is soulless blather.
Okay, nah.
Yes. Yeah, this is pretty kind of soulless, nonsensical blather and stupid, trying to teach us the whatever the interpersonal dynamics between all these characters that I still don't know who the fuck any of them are. And the overarching problem is something about Poison Ivy that's somewhere, and that she's out there, and apparently there's some connection between Clayface now and Poison Ivy and the vines versus the clay, and something that's sentient in both of them that controls them and makes them evil.
If this was meant to be marketing to publicize the show or get interest in the show from comic readers, this ain't gonna cut it, because this was absolute abomination. This should be the first thing, anything DC related, that gets canceled, because it is fucking awful. And these two writers, who apparently are associated with the show, should never write comic books again. They should probably never write anything again. Their typewriter privileges should be revoked forever. This thing is absolutely terrible. I'll give it a 0.5 out of 5. This thing is an abomination. It somewhat has a little bit of a plot to it, and I'll give it that. Now let's go over to Marvel Comics. We got Spider-Punk #1, Cody Ziglar and Justin Mason. The art is a little bit different of a style here, Doc, but I really like the art with this. It's the writing that kills it. What did you think about the art?
The art was okay. I wasn't a huge fan of it. It's definitely a younger artist that is fairly green. I think about 2-3 years from now, this dude could be doing some really, really cool, like, he's got a very Sean Gordon Murphy kind of vibe to him. And I think he could kind of develop into a similar type of artist. And once he gets there, I'll actually really like him. But it wasn't bad.
The characters were doing fun stuff in the story, and that's what you need from visuals, which is lacking throughout a lot of comics. I thought that was refreshing. I definitely don't know that the style fits for the character of Spider-Man, but perhaps Spider-Punk, who I don't think really even should exist. This weird Cody Ziglar version of Spider-Punk has nothing punk to do with it. It felt like the character was inspired by like 80s rap.
It did. And there was nothing punk about this. I feel like there is a very large segment of modern day comic book writers that have no fucking clue what punk is, because they grew up with like Good Charlotte as punk instead of the goddamn Sex Pistols, or even like Bad Religion and NoFX. This is fucking Good Charlotte punk.
And the dialogue does not service the characters at all. I already told you, it doesn't feel like a punk character, but everything these characters say is off-putting. Apparently they're fighting a Nazi version of Kraven and his hunters, and they've got these weapons, and you got this weird Captain Anarchy. And of course, guess what, Doc? We know because of one panel he's gay, because they had to throw that in there, even though it serves no purpose within the story. And we've got Riri Williams on the team, and these other characters, and they're just awful. And every time they speak, it's so off-putting, and it felt so much "Hey, fellow teens" type of thing. And it's one of the worst written comic books as far as dialogue I've ever read in my life. I thought Cody Ziglar did some good stuff on Spider-Man Beyond, but apparently he was being elevated by the other writers and editors around him. Now that he's on his own, my God, this is fucking awful.
It really is. Like when he did the Yahtzee punks fuck off early on, and I'm sitting there looking at it going like, that's a black girl, right? Like in Kraven's little gang. Like, I don't understand I don't get this. I'm really confused on what's going on. You know what? Spider-Punk, as a novelty, as like just a little kind of like character design, is kind of cool. From when they did Spider-Verse, where they had all these different Spider-Mans from all these different universes, kind of cool in a just design sense. The problem we got here is when they decided to try to make a story out of it. Yeah, no, we should have left the mystery. Oh, like, hey, I'd kind of like to see a story about that. Don't ever give it to me, but I would kind of like it. Don't ever tell me a story with them, because it's gonna be disappointing, and you're gonna end up ruining like kind of a cool variant cover design character that you could use on another. You could do a Punk month a couple of years from now. For like Johnny Rotten's 70th birthday or some shit. You can do a Spider-Punk variant on a Spider-Man comic, and you could do the Captain Anarchy on a Captain Marvel or Captain America comic. But what you can't do is, now you've kind of ruined that, and now I'm forever, every time I see Spider-Punk, instead of thinking, hey, that's kind of a cool design that I really don't need any more of, I'm just going to think of, oh yes, you tried to tell me a story with that one time, and it was really, really, really bad.
I like the idea of Elseworlds, and I don't mind there being little pocket universes and telling standalone stories, or even contain stories within there that don't get out. And I like that idea. But once you get up to like Spider-Punk, you're like, okay, you've run out of the good ideas. Don't ever do this again. Perhaps we should just stay in the 616, because this was so awful. And if anyone cared about this comic book, and by all accounts, like Nick Lowe, the Spider-Man group editor, is a good editor, and he, for the most part, keeps a pretty tight ship. That's obviously he did not care about this. If you don't care about the comic book enough to give it the proper oversight and deliver something that's actually acceptable for a normal comic reader, the bare minimum of requirements to deliver this thing, you shouldn't make it in the first place.
I guess maybe there could have been a cool Spider-Punk story, but this was so far away from it that honestly, I'm just going to laugh at that character's eyes in the future, instead of just thinking, oh, that's kind of cool.
Nothing cool about this comic book. I'll give it a 1 out of 5, because I do think the art here kind of stands out. It's kind of decent. It sucks that, Justin Mason's getting his first opportunity to kind of make a name within comic books, and he's stuck with one of the worst scripts I've ever read, just dialogue wise. So those are our worst of the week. We got Earth Prime, Batwoman #1. I would say that one's the worst one, Doc, but Spider-Punk ain't much better.
Well, I would have to say, yeah, Earth Prime, Batwoman, definitely worse. We did get one minor redemption at the end of Spider-Punk, which we get Misfits Taskmaster. So
that's true.
Yeah, with Glenn Danzig's hair.
There's another comic writer that's a perennial candidate for worst of the week. His name is Tom King from DC Comics. And this week he delivered another doozy of a bad comic book, as well as we got an announcement that he has a new Superman comic. If you haven't seen this, definitely check this out, and definitely be skipping Tom King's Batman and Superman comics, because it gets no worse. If you need some more cringe, here you go.